Hi guys, Rock here, the Small Business Buyer, and I'm back on one of our favorite broker sites. And I'm looking at online businesses here because most of the discussion up until now has been about offline businesses. But the fact of the matter is, we're in the 21st century and there are online businesses, and some of them are viable. Many of them are viable, and many of them can grow every bit as fast or even faster than offline businesses. So there's perfectly good reason to be looking at these companies. But the interesting thing is that it's a whole different science, and you see all different types of companies online that you would never see offline. So you have to figure out what they do, whether it makes sense, and whether the economics work. Now, one of the things I like to see, and which I see quite often, is that the actual numbers, like the cash price or the offering price versus the cash flow, is often very favorable. Now, this is usually true in sites like Flippa or some other online broker sites, which have these companies that are small and just budding, and they're just getting started, and they have very good multiples because the components may not be very well glued together. So you don't know if you're buying a real good business at, say, the $2,000 a month level or the $1,000 a month level. What you're buying is something that's just getting started. It's not going to make you a great income right away, but you could grow it, and you may find that it's a perfectly good, viable business for the future, but it just isn't, it's hard to get off the ground because it just started. So now, when we see businesses like an SEO business, that's search engine optimization. Okay, now not too many people outside of the internet industry know much about SEO because it's something of a technique and a science that you have to kind of learn. So you may or may not be interested in an SEO company, and you probably don't even know what it is. And those are the kind of things that are hard to understand. They may be perfectly good in cash flow. In this case, the cash flow is probably way too high for the price, which means something's wrong. You're probably not going to get it for that price, or you're not going to get it for that cash flow. So keep an eye out for those kind of problems, no matter whether it's offline or online. So you will see many, many different types of service companies online that will sell these services that have to do with other online companies, websites, website analytics, website services, all different types of internet related services are sold every day, and websites that sell them are sold every day. So there are lots of those things popping up, and they're not all that easy to understand versus, say, an e-commerce site, which very simply sells products, physical products. You can also buy other types of sites, digital product sites that sell digital products. And but the digital product sites are a little bit more difficult to understand because you have to prepare the digital products. In this case, these officer furniture manufacturing or daycare fixtures, drop shippers, or any company that actually deals in traditional physical products and has a channel to sell those products using the internet and using the online world as a marketing tool is a good example of an e-commerce site. And of course, these days there are hybrid internet sites, e-commerce sites that do both sell through the internet, they sell through Amazon, and they sell to the outside world with either walk-in traffic or distributorships. So in a sense, you can have your cake and eat it too with the physical products realm because there's so many channels to sell your product. Here's one, Swarovski. That's a very famous name. Crystals and craft products e-commerce website. Cash flow of 67,000 versus 185. In many cases, you will find these companies priced off of monthly net. Okay, a monthly net theoretically would be cash flow, and that might be $5,000 a month. $5,000 a month is a pretty good living, but what you're looking at here is about a 3x multiple year over year, and 6 times 3, $180,000. It's pretty pricey, actually. You see them lower than that. You see what they call maybe 15, 20, or 25x, which is 25 times monthly cash flow. And if you see that for example would be if $1,000 cash flow a month, you would see it at 20x, which would be $20,000, and that would be not even 2 times cash flow on a yearly basis. Now, if it were 24x, for example, that would be a 2 multiple of annual sales or cash flow. And these are always quoted as annual numbers for 12 months, and you'll see a lot of these internet sites are quoted on monthly basis, or 20x, 25x, 30x, that kind of thing of monthly cash flow. So that gives you an idea of how these things are priced. Now, usually you'll see the internet price being lower than a corresponding online or offline price, and that just makes sense. The offline company typically has higher barriers to entry. They're not as vulnerable to competition, a lot of other things. On the other hand, this very site, for example, and we can go into it, could easily grow very quickly if you put the right muscle and marketing talent into it. So there's nothing wrong with these sites, except their components are a little different to manage. They're a little different to market. The marketing actually can be easier, but it's a science you have to get familiar with. So I would not shy away from some of these online properties, especially when they're e-commerce related. I think the e-commerce site is the place for first-time buyers to get interested and be involved in, rather than some of the other more specialized web-based services or software services and some of those other things. This is easier to deal with and easier to understand for the first-time buyer. Especially for me, who's familiar with offline businesses, makes perfect sense to buy a e-commerce site because it deals with physical products, and you could conceivably migrate those products into all different channels, including storing the product at your facilities, developing distributors, developing walk-in business, anything you want to do with it, as well as selling online. In fact, these days more people are getting out of the retail business, the Main Street business, because their online counterparts are running them out of business. And so even if you have a retail business, you might consider putting those products online as well. Of course, the hard part to grasp is, well, I have a retail business, but where am I going to get all these products to sell online? Well, there are ways to do that. There are ways to drop ship. There are ways to fulfill. There are ways to do affiliate sales. And so there are many ways to sell products without necessarily getting all wrapped up in the inventory. So you do have lots of different options here. I'm going to go through a lot more in a lot more detail on the sites that I have to merge the thinking between online buyouts and offline buyouts, so that people can sort of get the best of both worlds. So that's my ultimate goal, is to actually develop the company that does both and has the best characteristics of both. So with that, I'll leave you to the next video, and signing off.